Today you're going to hear from former Speaker of the House, Paul Renner. You're going to hear about all the things he did while in the legislature, as Speaker, as an assistant attorney, and as a military veteran. He's going to talk to our members specifically about all the things he plans to do if he gets the honor to become the governor of Florida. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. He says, if you like cops, I like you. If you don't like cops, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
It's pretty easy. If you don't like cops, there's something not right there.
So, yeah. Today we have the honor and the privilege to be speaking with the former Speaker, Mr. Paul Renner. I'm going to do a quick background on you. You've done some stuff, so I had to write this down because I can't remember it. So you're a new U.S. Navy veteran. You served in Combat Ops and Operation Desert Storm under USS McInerney.
You got it right.
Love that. And later deployed to Afghanistan in 2011. You started your career as an assistant state attorney, then became a business attorney while raising a family in the Palm Coast with your wife, Adriana.
Yep.
Awesome. Elected to the House in 2015. You rose to Speaker for the 2022 through 2024 term and made public safety your mission. You backed law enforcement funding, cracking down on violent crime, killing citizen review boards that tie officers' hands, pushing swift death penalty justice for victims' families, and rolling out hard-hitting anti-human trafficking agenda that actually resources the cops and prosecutors on the front lines. Now you're running for governor. You're running on a Florida First platform, and you're here to talk about your platform and how you plan on doing that. You're going to be talking to our members' family, and then to the law enforcement world here in Florida. We have over 1,900 registered voters here in this area who wear the badge every day and do the tough job of keeping our community safe. So, Speaker Renner, welcome to the show. We can get to it.
Great to be here, and thank you to everybody who's taking the time to listen to me. This next governor is a very, very important decision, so thanks for listening to me about why I should be your next governor. And thank you also to the men and women who wear the uniform and also their spouses. I always say, as a former veteran, spouses serve too. We get the pat on the back, free beer in the airport, all that good stuff, but oftentimes the spouses are kind of serving, silently, quietly, and it's tough. I get it. It's tough, and we're going to talk about affordability issues and how people are having a hard time making ends meet. I get that too, and so look forward to speaking to your members.
Awesome. It's going to be great.
Speaker Renner, we want to make sure that we're being respectful to you. How can we refer to you during the podcast?
Paul.
All right, Paul.
Hey,
I'm Sasha.
Hey, dude.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe not. I would like to hear you say, hey, dude. That would delight me.
No, hey, dude.
I'm Sasha Lone. I'm the General Counsel and Executive Director of Suncoast PBA. John Vasquez is our elected board president, representing all 1,900 of our members and their families. We've been practicing here together since 2020, and we're just thrilled to have you. We've got a series of questions written out in advance. Sure. Yeah. If anything we say is factually inaccurate, please correct us. We want to research and be totally accurate when we're representing who you are and what you've accomplished. So my first question for you, I'm going to do a little bit of background.
You're a great lawyer.
Thank you so much.
So as a lawyer preparing before a deposition or whatever.
Yes, it's true. It's really, listen.
There's a question you don't understand, please stop me and ask. I'll be happy to say it.
Correct. We can also cross-examine John at the end if you want. Right. So you've had this really interesting career moving from military service into prosecution. You served in the Navy JAG.
No, not in the JAG, actually. That was the first correction. So I was I was a warfighter, so surface warfare officer. That's good. And then in Desert Storm, and then as a reservist, I switched over to the intelligence side. So I was an intel officer in Afghanistan leading a unit. We'll talk about that in a moment whenever you're ready.
Thank you for the correction.
Sure.
So in private practice, and then you moved in through Florida politics all the way up to becoming the Speaker of the House, which is no small feat. It's an uncommon path, and I thought it was really interesting in my research because it spans structured legal systems and highly political environments. You've also talked about the influence of discipline and service and responsibility as core drivers and like your personal ethics. Looking back on that path, what do you think pushed you from law and military service into elected office?
Well, I grew up as a preacher's kid. My mom was a public school teacher, so it was kind of part of the family DNA and kind of burned into me to place service above self. It's what every law enforcement member does every day. And so that's the kind of the life I grew up in. And so it was a natural transition. I joke, when I was too old and broken for the Navy, I was still okay to be in politics and continue to serve my community as I served my country in the military and my state as a prosecutor, the only prosecutor in this race. And so that's what really led me to it. My first race, just so you know, a little piece of trivia, I ran in 2014. The member, I was thinking, maybe in 2018 when he terms out, I'll run. And he just abruptly resigns, gets a good job, and leaves the state house. So you had to make a decision. We ran, we raised a bunch of money, had an unknown congressman named Ron DeSantis endorsed me, and John Rutherford, the sheriff up there, raised a bunch of money. We're going to win this thing. And a guy comes in with just a boatload of money. And anyway, we lost that race by 2 votes.
Oh my.
Wow.
It was really 1 vote. So I jumped in and then got a call, hey, we really liked you. We think you'd be great. We want you to run. There's another seat that's opened up. We want you to run this seat. We did. That wound up being the best thing that ever happened to me politically. And I think that's true. It's been true in my life. Sometimes you see those initial frustrations. You just got to stay the course and know that something good's coming down the road for you. And had the honor to earn the trust. For those that don't know what speaker is, you're the number 2 guy behind the governor, really, leading the legislature, determining what goes in the budget, what bills pass and don't pass. In general, I would pick committee chairs, all the committee sub-chairs and chairs. I'd let them do their job. I didn't try to lean in if they didn't want to hear something unless it was really something important we needed to get across the finish line. And so, and you have to earn the trust of your peers. All those other Republicans in the majority pick that speaker and have to decide you're the guy that will put the best interests of the state at heart. You'll put my best interest at heart. Everybody wants a leader with high character, high competence, and high courage. And so we don't always have that. And I say that as a Republican. There's a lot of Republicans that fail on 1 or more, sometimes all 3, but 1 or more of those. And you can't be a great leader without all 3. And I believe when we stepped into the speakership, because of my veteran background, like law enforcement, love of your country and state, putting service above self, and focusing on the mission. Everybody wears the same uniform when you come in for that morning, muster and that brief before you go out on your time on duty, and that's good. We were all focused on the mission. As law enforcement, as military guys, I was focused on the mission as speaker to go get things done. What people are frustrated with right now, and this is a statement as a Republican, is they're not listening, they're not executing, they're not delivering for our needs. And top of mind is affordability. Nobody can afford things anymore. That is what our campaign is primarily focused on. We're talking about keeping Florida free, keeping Florida safe, and we can talk about that, but I will get after that on day 1.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Good. It's encouraging. Back to your speakership. So during your time as speaker, you were in a position where you saw a lot of big picture policy debates around criminal justice and public safety. Have you ever had direct moments with officers and their families who have been impacted by those big picture decisions? Is there one moment, maybe a conversation, a meeting, or something you saw firsthand that really struck you in how you changed the way you think about law enforcement and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I had experience, going back maybe more so as a prosecutor, and everybody listening knows that that's a close relationship. You guys do your job, and you pass it off to us. We try to do our job and lead to justice at the end and take bad guys off the street. And so, just a lot of good relationships, I guess, is what I would say, and understanding better than anyone else in the race. Not their fault, but I've been there and they haven't, as the only prosecutor in the race and the only one that has any law enforcement, that kind of experience. Military, obviously, same thing as I get it. And so I know, for example, police are never paid enough, as much as they deserve. And so this affordability issue, I know it pinches, and when you're out putting your life at risk is different than, worrying about a paper cut in the office. And when you're still getting not paid enough, it hurts. And so we did a lot in paying bonuses to try to help there. Certainly with our share, on the sheriff's side, we try to do, when I was speaker, bring that pension down from 30 years down to 25 years, because a lot of cities are 20 years. Why would I stick around as a sheriff's deputy if I can go somewhere else? And so on retirement, more flexibility on retirement, and just, again, paying bonuses and protection too, because, the job's hard enough. You got fentanyl threats. We made sure to raise those penalties for people that expose our officers to fentanyl, get rid of citizen review boards. That was a personal priority of mine because I know that it's a tool of harassment by people that have turned the world upside down, and they treat the good guys as bad guys and the bad guys as good guys. And I don't know what's happening up here or here, but it's not right. And so that was important to me to put that aside so that, you know, we don't have the defund the police crowd that are coming in and throwing rocks at you as you're trying to do your job. The HALO Act, I think that was a big one that was run by Alex Rizzo in the House. But I think Minneapolis, what happened there with ICE, if they had that, probably wouldn't have had the escalation they had, because you could just say, look, if you're going to come in here while I'm making an investigation or arrest, and I've warned you, and you still come in, I can arrest you on the spot. Now, do I prosecute you or not? You know, maybe not, but at least you've de-escalated the situation, and you can make a judgment as to whether that guy was enough a knucklehead to proceed toward prosecution, and maybe he deserves that. In my opinion, he probably does, but at least it stops you from being at risk. And so we did things like that to look and had very close relationships. I guess probably from my time as speaker, it's brothers and sisters to me. So you're talking about, hey, what do you guys need? What's happening on the ground? You know what's happening on the ground. We as politicians don't. And so listening and being open, and we were like, let's go. What do you guys need? And whether it's in paying bonuses and things that PBA cares about and works for to make the lives of your members better, to fight for their pay, to fight for them not to be treated poorly in an investigation and be treated fairly. That's all we ask. Is we were on board for all of that.
Absolutely. So you didn't just serve in the Florida House like we've been talking about. You led it, setting the agenda and overseeing major legislation across criminal justice and budget priorities. You were the first person to fulfill the ongoing, we're going to try to keep ongoing, budget line item for the ETMS program that I know Danny Alvarez and at the time Senator Jay Collins brought to your attention. It's a program that here at our organization at Suncoast PBA we've fallen in love with only because we've seen the benefit that it has on our members. At first I thought it was a whole bunch of snake oil, this magnet on my brain is going to do something and I'm going to feel better, but having sent one of our members to it who was in crisis and then having that member report back the benefit that had was phenomenal. So I appreciate that funding there. So that role puts you in a position where you're not just voting on policy, but deciding what rises to the top and what gets priority. Looking back, what is one decision or policy priority from your time as Speaker that had the most direct impact on law enforcement officers and their families? And I know you already mentioned the HALO law, but if there's another.
I think in going after, other threats to law enforcement, whatever those are, to protect them also in investigations with them, they're going to be treated fairly, these kinds of things. You mentioned the innovative treatments to try to help people. I think it's really important. As a veteran, I'll give you so come back from Afghanistan, hey, have you thought about killing yourself or this? You have this outtake. If you say yes, or you say, and fortunately I didn't have that issue, but if you say out loud, I'm having a hard time, your butt's sitting there for who knows long. You haven't seen your family for a year. Correct. The answer is, I feel great. Send me home.
Fine and dandy, sir.
Send me home. Fine and dandy. And so, we want to make sure we're honest with each other and helping each other. And so not only do we do that, but other innovative treatments, alternative treatments, I'm all about. And sometimes you get pushback from incumbents who want to say, oh, just keep doping people up. It doesn't work. That's masking the symptoms. Correct. And so one of the things we did that I'm also excited about here at USF in Tampa is a study. It's right now it's a veteran-only study, but it's on traumatic brain injury. So a cop gets into an accident, has a major, has a severe brain injury, to actually heal the brain through hyperbaric oxygen treatment. So it's these deep dives, and I don't know, because I'm not a scientist, but whether it can also help with some of the emotional traumas that people see stuff. I mean, people see stuff in war, people see stuff on road patrol that, it just gets in your head. It's hard to forget. And so offering these various alternative treatments, whatever works for you, I'm good with. If it helps you, let's do it. And not say, no, we're going to keep going on the path we've been on that just dopes people up, just masks the problem. And it really doesn't really get to the core issue. We want to get to the core issue, put people out that are going to be in good shape. And this is true. I don't know if you guys represent the 911 folks, but they're on my heart too, because that at least you get to know how it turns out. Correct. They don't get to know how it turns out.
Correct. Yeah. In St. Pete, I'm taking one of our PSTs to the legislature this coming year and have her testify at one of the committees and talk about one of the calls she dealt with. Unfortunately, she was on the phone with the mother who was in crisis because her mentally disabled son was having an emotional issue, and he barged in the room and killed her with a knife while this call taker heard of that going on and happening live. And that's horrible. But some kudos here. As a combat vet myself, I did 2 tours in Iraq and had the honor to serve in the military. You're right. When you get out, it's the reverse SRP. Are you good? Are you okay?
Yeah,
Do you want to hurt yourself? You're like, could it be better,
Never been
sir?
better.
Salute. I
Never
want to go
been
see
better.
my family.
Right.
But the ETMS program, we think, with the that being continually funded for the last 2 years, we got great results that we've been sending to FDA. Hopefully, it gets FDA approval this last and third year. So we can make that accessible for all of our first responders, veterans, and police officers.
Well, let me say this about that. So we're doing this hyperbaric in part, and it's sufficiently funded. So at the end, the VA, for example, cannot say no.
Wow.
If it works, they're going to have to accept that it works. We've got it's multifaceted. People are following along so that they can be the ones testifying to say this is how it affected the spouse, this is how it affected the kids, because they got better.
Yeah.
And so what I'll say to you is we'll turn our universities like USF and others loose to do that research to back up ETMS, to validate it so that we can get that as an approved model for the state, for the nation. I mean, if it's working, it's working. I mean, and you can see the results. And with hyperbaric, the people I've talked to that have used it is like total game changer.
You just brought up a key point too, that you pointed out. Not only does it affect the service member who may be going through traumatic brain injury or any kind of other stressor. If that hyperbaric chamber thing works, that's absolutely fantastic, but it does affect the family as well. Because, a lot of people can't compartmentalize and can't keep, to themselves what they dealt with or what they saw. They had to pull that dead kid from a pool and try to resuscitate him while the family's grieving behind you. We bring that home a lot of the time and unload that on your spouse and kids.
Could I run over quicker? I mean, there's all the questions.
Yeah,
all the questions. Yeah, I was a prosecutor. I'm glad I never got into sex crimes, but I mean, if something happened to a little kid and I lost a case, I don't know how. I'd just like wake up at night thinking I should have said this or that. Should have convinced that jury.
Absolutely.
I was just listening so carefully to what you both were saying.
Yeah.
I tapped John on the knee because we've talked about that exit, statement that you made about when you exit the military and you're like, everything's great, I'm totally fine, please let me go see my kids.
Everything's wonderful.
Which is the worst way to resource people.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk briefly about our program with St. Petersburg College before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely, since we're on a mental health thing. So Sasha and I started in 2020. Obviously that was COVID, George Floyd. We had just finished wrapping up a meeting with all of our chiefs, all of our people in the local legislature and city council and commissioners, and kind of like, hey, this is the new people run the organization. We have great plans and ideas. We want to work collaboratively. Help us out, and we'll help you out. That led to a conversation of Sasha getting inundated with a lot of internal affairs investigations, not because of bad cops, but because of cops overstressed in a horrific time period that we were dealing with.
Yeah.
And it was more discourtesies, right? And officers just had enough of the day and is snippy and snappy and rude and discourteous. 100% discourteous.
I get that way. We all get that way.
Yes.
Absolutely. But what a lot of administrations were failing to do, not 100% their fault, because again, it was trying times, was they didn't why are you acting this way?
Give them a little grace because it was a special time.
Correct.
Special time.
Correct, in a not special time. So we had the ability and the great benefit to speak to one of our local county commissioners who happened to have a good relationship with the president of SPC, Dr. Tanja Williams. And we sat for an hour with her and poured out our heart on what we needed, how they could help us potentially create a program that is officer-led for officers as a mental health peer-to-peer support group. And you have EAP and you have these volunteers for peer-to-peer stuff, but what we wanted was specific training, specific classroom studies so that these officers are well-trained, well-versed in identifying and how to handle their brothers or sisters in uniform when they're going through a critical incident. If you and I work together on a day-to-day basis and you two only see each other once in a blue moon, I'm going to tell, ooh, Paul doesn't look good today.
Right.
He's not shaving, his breath smells like alcohol, his eyes are a little bloodshot.
What's wrong with you, buddy?
Let me address you now before that escalates to something. And it gives the officers the confidence of dealing with that because they've been trained by psychologists and psychiatrists with their PsyDs at this college that has been truly created for cops by cops. The officers have a great ability to tell the staff there, we really don't need to hear about that. This is what we're feeling and this is what we're focusing on. This is what we're dealing with day to day in our department. Train us on this. How to identify that? And it's been working fantastic. They've validated and they've checked and resource checked a bunch of the resources that Florida already provides, that the government provides, but they went into those specific ones and make sure that it actually works. Like when they call this whatever number, that somebody actually picks up the phone.
Right,
It's real and it's effective.
Correct, because the last thing you want to do is resource.
You're
send
frustrated,
a resource,
and now
it's not there.
nobody is like, sorry, this number has
Correct.
changed.
Or it's a recording, or it's
Yeah,
somebody
press
that's going to call you
one.
back
Yeah.
in 4 days. And
Yeah.
if we're referring somebody that's contemplating suicide, we want them to get services
Right away.
immediately.
Right
we
away.
want them to get the best possible services.
Absolutely.
It's
So-
go ahead.
Sorry. So the greatest thing about this program is it's free for our members. So we teamed up with the legislature, and the legislature did a 3-year appropriation for the college and all of its funds. The Pepin Foundation and the Tampa Bay Area Police Chiefs Foundation paid for all of the students, all of our members, to go to this, to make sure that they didn't have to come out of pocket, and so they can get this training and this resource to make sure that their brothers and sisters
Fantastic.
are good. Unfortunately, in St. Pete, in the last 18 months, we lost 2 sergeants to suicide. 3 weeks ago, maybe, we just lost a Hillsborough County deputy. In 2024, the last time we had the full statistics of the year, we lost 180 cops to suicide, which is 3 times more than what are getting killed on the streets. As a combat veteran, I can understand somebody being killed in line of duty. We wear vests. We carry guns. In war, you have bombs and rockets and grenades. Here in law enforcement, you have knives, crazy bad guys, and guns. What I can't understand and I can't wrap my head around is, after surviving a year-long deployment, after surviving a 10 or 12-hour shift at your job, why are you going to go commit suicide? You're doing everything you can. You're trying to stay up on your tactics and your training and your procedures to keep yourself safe while on mission in the military or in law enforcement. But then you feel that you have no resources or no help, and that leads you to making the ultimate decision of committing suicide for something that could be a temporary problem.
It's always a temporary problem.
Correct, always a temporary
Those
problem.
are not good numbers.
No, they're bad. And unfortunately, I think it's increasing. We don't have 2025's data yet. It should be coming out by the end of April. But I think it's going to be more than 180. And it's not that we're not shouting it from the mountaintops. We are. It's the old days of us in the military saying, well, if I say this is going to happen. They're going to take my gun, my badge. They're going to take me off the street.
That can't happen. That can't happen. Because you're not going to get. It's not going to be better unless you fix it.
Correct. And the great thing is we can testify to the fact that that's not what's happening. In between those 2 sergeants committing suicide, we sent another sergeant to Tennessee for a month-long treatment process because they were suicidal. They came back refreshed, rejuvenated, and I don't want to say healed, but knowing how to deal with whatever mental health issues they were dealing with. And they're a testament that you can talk about it, you can go get treatment, and you can come back. And this person is a sergeant.
Yeah,
they're running a squad.
Good as gold and go back.
It's been several months and they've been perfect.
Yeah. Well, that's a message everybody needs to hear on this podcast.
It is. It's use the resources. Correct. We're really proud of that program with SPC
that's fantastic.
and Dr. Tanja Williams, and Kathleen Peters was the bridge for us. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons that we like to talk to people like you that are in positions of influence, because officers do come to us as their union and say, hey, this would be really cool. What do you think? And those ideas are the ones that get buy-in. Mm-hmm. Like the ideas that are from the officers for themselves, they know what they need. You already said it. Like, they know what they need. And creating programs like that, it's a 3-semester college program. They graduate with a certificate. All of those credits are usable and applicable towards a bachelor's degree or towards their terminal degree. Our long-term goal with that is that we have folks that are after they complete their law enforcement career, they go open up their own clinic as a licensed mental health practitioner or a PsyD or a PhD, because we have plenty of work. And we would love to have more men in positions to be mental health practitioners, more people of color, just people with diverse backgrounds, so that we can send members to someone who they identify with who's done their job. All right, moving on to something happy. Not that mental health isn't, but it's heavy. It's beautiful when it works, and it's awful when it doesn't. One of the things that we find interesting with folks like you who are in positions of influence is that you work so much on the policy level, and we find that we get our best information to feed to policymakers from our boots on the ground people. And we find that most of the time, you guys have friends and family members that are in law enforcement that are talking to you about their day-to-day experiences, what it's like to drive the car around, what it's like to have people wave at them versus throw them the bird. So we're interested in hearing from you. Do you have close friends or family that are boots on the ground law enforcement officers? You clearly did as a prosecutor. And what about being their friend or their family member has influenced the way you understand law enforcement?
Yeah, I don't know if I can point to like some magic moment or whatnot, but it's the same thing, you know. Obviously friendly with the sheriffs, friendly with PBA members that I know, that you know, that I've gotten close with in my time in the legislature, that whisper in my ear and I listen. So I mean, you know, I know I'm getting it. I know I'm getting the boots on the ground straight from them. Correct. And you know, the sheriffs are great too, but I know I'm getting like stuff that, in a good listener, I believe in leadership by walking around and listening to people. So yeah.
That's very good.
So don't be surprised if I just show up unannounced one day as governor and show up at some city police department or sheriff's department, or show up to talk to some guys that don't have a lot of stripes on their sleeve to find out, hey, what's going on.
Correct. And
that's how you learn things.
Absolutely, and you know that from your time in the military as well.
Yes.
You're going to hear the truth. Not saying these chiefs, these sheriffs are lying, but you know, they all have bosses and or people who are going to vote for them or not vote for them, and they don't want to risk that. But talking to the boots on the ground who go to those calls every single day, you're going to get the truest, rawest, unfiltered. Yeah. Probably a little bit of, you know, 4-letter words in there, but you're going to,
because you're on the receiving end. If you're leadership, you know, you're not going to tell the governor like, oh, we've got some people in crisis. Yeah, we're you know, I'm struggling.
Pages in our cars are coming detached, but we're afraid to ask for more money to get them fixed. Things that are
exactly.
It's not the fault of the police chiefs, honestly, and it's not the fault of the sheriffs. There's so many pressures on them that we really get. Like, a lot of them are our members too, but the individual members that have to drive a car that's no longer as optimal as it should be, or they have a gun that, you know, maybe it goes off when they don't pull the trigger. There's stuff that's real that they tell us, and having that open communication line with you is pivotal to their safety and their security. We need to be able to come to our governor and say, hey, we haven't had a COLA on these people's FRS pension in a really long time, and that changed, and it was really wrong. It was ethically wrong, and you and I both know it.
Yeah. We tried to do that when I was speaker. I did not succeed in that, but I proposed up on the House side that we do at least a COLA, one-time COLA, whatever we could get. You know, we got a lot of retirement stuff done. I mentioned the 30 to 25, which is huge. Some other flexibility on drop and that kind of thing for people that are in our FRS. But that was one that, you know, as and what I've said just publicly is, obviously we have to have available funds. If we're in a recession and we're cutting salaries or whatever, there's not going to be any money for COLAs. But when we have those good years, to do something at least on a one-time basis to get people not caught up, but not fall farther behind. Correct. Yeah, and with the run up in inflation, I mean, it's just eating everybody, and that is the number one issue facing people. What I'm running on is lower people's costs where we can, taxes, insurance, healthcare bills, electric rates, those kinds of things that we can get after.
I think. Do you mind if I say one more thing about affordability? You said when you sat down, affordability is like the center heartbeat of your campaign. And I think we were so excited to hear that from you, because it is the major stressor that our members face is affordability. Yeah. They go do these impossible, you know, extra human jobs. They do things that nobody should have to do and no one should have to see. And then when they retire, to not have a cost of living adjustment for years and years and years means that as they get older, their quality of life decreases.
Weaker, right, exactly.
And it's just, I completely, deeply understand a balanced budget. And I know that Florida has failed on that from time to time. But when we're looking at places to cut costs, we would implore you to keep those older police officers and their families in mind. They deserve to live good lives in retirement. And I know you know that. I know we're values aligned on that. One of the things that we're really looking for in a governor is somebody who doesn't just want to take the pretty picture and doesn't want to just say, I back the blue, but somebody who in those quiet moments sitting alone in the office at night looks at that budget and says, you know, I'm thinking of that law enforcement officer who retired and they had to move out of Florida because it's too expensive to stay here. And they're having to decide whether to fund their prescriptions or their groceries, and they can't travel to see their grandkids. And is that who we want to be as a state that asks someone to give everything they've got to protect the state and its businesses and its people and its visitors, and then in retirement, they're living in a diminishing return each year? Right. I know that's not what you want. And it's not what we want either.
Right. Yeah, and the difference between me and everybody else is I got a lot of receipts to prove that, you know, everybody's going to say, I'll make your wildest dreams come true, but who's actually shown up and delivered for you? And issue after issue, we've talked about some, maybe not all of them, but on those issues, COLA would be one of them, is I've shown up and delivered, or at least made the effort to deliver, unlike everybody else that is campaigning. So
this leads right into this next question. So I think it's fair to say most candidates talk about supporting law enforcement while on the campaign trail. It's a catchy thing to say. Obviously, they know it comes with a big support system if that's the mentality that the candidate is taking. The difference is what happens on the campaign trail versus what happens on day one in the governor's office. So if you become governor, what are the first concrete steps you would take that officers and their families would actually feel? We talked about pay, structure, benefits, mental health, things like that.
Yeah, we talked about mental health, and the good news is I think the incoming speaker that will be shifting in has got to focus on that. I think we're going to have a lot of talks about mental health. But on affordability, lowering property taxes has got to happen. I've called for a legislative rollback as the first step. It could be done in 2 days. We've spent a year and a half. There's not a single thing on the ballot now to save $1 in property taxes. Not one. And I don't know if the House and Senate are going to get together, and even if they do, they need 60%. Even if they do, it has to go to the ballot and get 60% to be permanent. But one thing that can be done with a 2/3 vote is a legislative rollback. And we can do that by bringing it back to 24, 23, 22. It'll give everybody tax relief, but not be so great, because I know there's a lot of people in law enforcement that are concerned about, okay, that's how we pay our budget.
Very concerned.
And so we can do it in a way that balances lowering law enforcement's cost at home, lowering their property taxes, everybody, renters, not just Homestead, on the rollback. That's one thing. Insurance, I worked on insurance, property insurance, double-digit increases. Auto went up 30% before the reforms that I championed, and we got after that. A result of that, auto rates, State Farm's the leader in it. It's not everybody's down 20%, but they're down 20% and sending a refund check to their customers. Progressive's down, I think, 15%, and the average is around 8% of a reduction. Nobody is going down in insurance premiums in the country, but Florida, that's because of the reforms that I championed. Property insurance, it's gone all like this. I think it's not going down. What it's doing is it's starting to do more of this. It's not as bad as it was. And some people are seeing reductions. I haven't. I don't know if anybody in this area, because the hurricanes has. I think we're getting hit pretty hard here in the Tampa, St. Pete area. But there's more we can do there to help with home hardening programs. We got a My Safe Florida Home program that gives everybody, anybody, but law enforcement, up to $10,000 if you want to do new doors, windows, roof ties to harden your home and reduce your premiums. You're entitled to a credit to reduce your premiums. I know these things because I've been there, so I can step in on day one as governor and say, we did that as speaker. Let's continue that program. Let's up that program. Let's do regulatory things to bring down insurance, electric rates. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I know what we need to do with the utilities to bring down and provide the lowest electricity possible. That's not happening right now. No. We've had a record increase, and I know where the bodies are buried. I know what needs to happen. I will make it happen. It's a big political fight, but with the help of your members, we're going to make it happen. Because I did a lot of things that people said you're not, like the litigation reform that people said you're not going to win. And we won. We also won, as an aside, we'll come back to that in a minute on kids, because it relates to what you guys do. And then healthcare costs. And Obamacare kind of covers a lot of the field, and that's federal, and we need to claw some of that back, I believe, because since its inception, premiums are up, deductibles are up, copays are up. It's just simply not working. But if it stays, there are things we can do at the state level to help at the margins to try to bring down those healthcare costs too. That will be day one priority, is affordability, making sure that the last thing I want is, you alluded to it, you come home after a tough day, you've had one of those days where people are not nice to you, where you're doing your job, your life's at risk, you come home, your wife's crying because you can't pay your bills. We gotta fix that. Yeah. That is my number one priority.
Yeah, imagine going back to work the next day and trying to put everybody else's lives as your top priority when you just had a tough conversation with your wife, when you're having to pick, do you pay the mortgage or do you pay, insurance or a car payment? How can we make both those things work?
That is just not okay in my mind.
And it impacts so many of our members who are trying to choose between, they know they can't afford the best daycare, or they can't afford. We have so many members with children with disabilities that their children are under-resourced because they can't afford to do the therapies that you or I would do for our kids. And it's just not right. When you talk about that holistic plan, all of those different things, that feels very gubernatorial to me, as opposed to some of our leaders currently who want that magic bullet fix to put on a mailer. And we really do want to remind everybody that sits in that chair that property taxes are the way that our members get paid.
Yeah.
And I know you know that.
Yeah.
But it is
You got to hit the right spot.
it's really important for us to tell you that we already see city managers, county managers, and sheriffs struggling with their budgets. We are not a rich field in terms of monetary resources. And the idea that they would have less to work with is, again, anathema. It is effectively defund the police.
Exactly, and if you defund the police, that's a bad place to be as governor. And part of my plan would also require that the counties would have to certify funding at law enforcement first.
That's great.
First responders, okay, law enforcement, fire, all that. That has to happen first, which means that you're going to do what you should do at a county level, which is the Doge stuff that they're finding or whatever. That's got to go away. Law enforcement, public safety is the #1 priority of government. I say that not just in front of a podcast with police and spouses watching, but that's why we have governments,
Yes.
is to protect lives and property from killing each other, preserve the rule of law, keep safety. Nothing can happen, nothing can thrive. Business can't thrive, you can't learn, your kids can't play in the streets. Just go down the list, your housing prices go down if you have crime in the streets, and everything gets better when you do have public safety. So that is the starting point of every good thing in society, and you better fund it. And what's happened is, and this is why I'm a conservative, is that as government's supposed to be everything to all people, it can't be. And the more you do everything for all people, the less and less you prioritize public safety, which is that starting point. And if you look at funding, that's why you guys have gotten squeezed out over time, because, I need free this or free that or whatever. I mean, I get it, but that's not how I approach things. And so we can do things from a regulatory standpoint to get government out of the way, to make sure that there's not things that, from a regulatory standpoint, that can bring those rates down or make them do the right thing. We'll do that. But we've got to prioritize both public safety and bringing down costs.
Absolutely. So you have a long history of working with law enforcement, labor unions, to include the PBA. I remember going up there and us chatting and doing the photo stuff and talking about the next challenges that we have coming up. How do you see the relationship working in practice when you're in the governor's office and the PBA is advocating on behalf of members?
Well, I'll tell you, before I forget, I don't want to forget, I want your support. I want everybody that's listening, I want your support. I want the PBA's endorsement. I'd be proud to have it. And it means having those conversations, that whisper in the ear of having the governor's cell phone to say, hey, you're hearing this, but this is what's really happening. I need to know that.
Absolutely.
I don't know unless I know. And so you will always have an open line of communication. And I think if you talk to your fellow members, you'll hear that that's exactly what I did when I was speaker.
Awesome.
We have heard that.
Yeah, we have.
There's a mug somewhere in this room from Gary Bradford,
it's
who
over
I
in the
know
corner.
you loved the same way we did, and he always talked about you and that you were an open line of communication.
Yeah.
God rest his soul.
Yeah.
He didn't speak well of everybody, but he spoke well of you.
Not everybody. But his quote, since the cup's not out here, and that was my fault for not leaving out here, he said a quote that now will forever live in infamy. He says, if you like cops, I like you. If you don't like cops, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
It's pretty easy.
Pretty
If you don't like cops, there's something not
there's
right there.
something
So,
not ticking there.
yeah.
And Gary applied that across the aisle.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
He didn't care. If you
No.
like cops, he liked you. He
Yeah.
also liked people who like to eat.
Yes, because he liked
I'm
you.
He liked
I'm
you.
in there.
Yeah. A lot of good dinner meetings with
For
Gary.
sure.
We've really already covered this. I'm going to read it, but I think we've thoroughly covered it. Florida's insurance situation has been a real pain point for a lot of families, especially when it comes to property coverage rates and just overall affordability to insure their homes. So many of our members have moved out of Pinellas County because they can't afford to live here. And they can't afford to live in Hillsborough either. We've got people commuting from
Hernando.
from Hernando and the southern parts of Manatee County so that they can afford a house in a safe neighborhood for their kids. For law enforcement families in particular, as you know, there's not a lot of flexibility in their budgets. They can't, they're not going to get merit raises. It's just not the way this works. It's a step plan based, form of payment. So in some ways it's wonderful and it's predictable, and in some ways it's hard. It's not corporate America where you can impress your boss and get a $50,000 raise, So as Speaker, you were right in the middle of that legislative push around property insurance, and you tried to stabilize the market. We saw that. Is that an important topic that you plan to continue and invest in?
100%. And I know where the bodies are buried. I know we have to protect and focus on consumers, not the insurers, not the plaintiffs' lawyers. We have to keep them at bay and keep them in check. and focus on lowering costs, keeping them insurers accountable to people when they have a claim, all those things. And I know where the bodies are buried and what more we need to do. We did a lot in those a couple years when I was speaker, and you see companies that were going out of business, and now many companies are now coming in, which increases competition. That's causing that downward pressure now on rates. But there's a lot of things moving in the opposite direction, whether it's tariffs or all that stuff that raises the cost of replacing a house, that working against us. But those reforms are 100% working, and the good news is the commissioner tells me that we were still a year or two out from the full benefit of that, because they went out and filed a lot of lawsuits under the old rules that are still working their way through the system, and when those pay out, we pay for it. And so that's still happening under the old rules before we did those reforms. So we're still not clear of all the problems we were facing in the litigation marketplace that was driving, few people get rich and we all pay the bill, basically, is what was happening. And so that's kind of moving through the system. We see that downward pressure, but there is more we can do. I know what that is, and I know how to get it done by virtue of the fact that I got it done.
Can I add one thing on that, just because with great love and respect, I always feel like it's easy to take a punch at plaintiffs' attorneys and do the tort reform conversation. And I just want to pause and say, from our experience, we visited over 75 families who were flooded out of their homes during Milton and Helene. And there were no evil plaintiffs' attorneys.
But let me finish
some
the whole
evil
thing.
Insurers. There were
Yeah.
some evil insurers. We have members whose
100%.
houses were flooded with sewage water, and their insurers, who they dutifully paid their premiums, would not make them whole, or told them they had to keep their stone countertops from 1974, but they would only replace the bottom footers of their, just stuff that was so nickel and dimey. And we know those insurance CEOs have second, third, fourth homes that are. So I with great respect, I tire a little of hearing that the plaintiffs' attorneys are the entire problem when we
They're
know
not the entire problem.
that the
No.
insurance
That's what I was saying. We
companies
got
are
to focus on the
problematic too.
consumers, not the insurers, not the plaintiffs. You got to keep them both in check. And so the other thing we did while I was speaker is an insurer accountability bill. That there's a pattern or practice that obviously you got to have a complaint. But if people are having that kind of experience, they need to report it up, because we increase the penalties on that to hammer people. And as governor, I don't have any use for people that take advantage of people, especially
After a hurricane.
After a hurricane.
Thank you.
And I don't mind hammering the insurance companies. And I always say they got to be just as good at paying claims as taking premiums. They're real good at taking premiums. So
Could you say that one more time into the camera? I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
So many members who work so hard for their homes, watch their homes flood with unprecedented water.
Yeah, I'm not on a side other than the consumer side. Is
Yes.
the bottom line.
Well, that's us
that
too.
we can't have a few people getting rich on the plaintiff side, and we can't have the insurers saying, "Okay, let's see how we can deny your coverage or nitpick you or whatever else." You got to keep those guys accountable too. We did both of those. Now, I think there's more to do over here, and I also think there's more to do over here, because we did a thing on roofs where they couldn't say you got to do a new roof in 10 years or whatever. We put it up to, I think, to 15 years. You can get an inspection. I don't think people know that, and I'm not sure they're being told. Because you have a right to get an inspection. If the roof is functional, they cannot tell you you have to get a new roof to get renewed.
That's good.
And I hear that. No, I hear that. We pass that. I hear that too many times to believe that they're not still doing it and trying to get away with it and not telling people. And so don't worry. I mean, I'm an equal opportunity, and as a former prosecutor, I don't like bullies. I don't like people who take advantage of the vulnerable. I was mentioning earlier, I was going to talk about social media and what we did to protect kids online from sexual predators. We're going to get after sex trafficking and support law enforcement that are severely underfunded. You talk about having some some issues that you're dealing with. There's a real kid or boy or girl that's being groomed or being taken advantage of potentially, and you don't have the resources to get after it. We're going to get after it. We're going to come after those guys.
That's great. On that topic, not necessarily of the children or sex crimes, but people don't really understand how it affects an officer or a detective when they know what needs to be done
And they can't do it.
and they can't do it because of lack of funding or lack of support. And that's difficult. We have something that we were trying to push through the legislature this past session, now that it just ended, and now we're going to continue to push next session about stalking when it comes to sexually explicit stalking on the curtilage of your property. We want to push an enhancement for that, because right now it's a misdemeanor. What we don't want to do is have to sit as detectives, undercover detectives, and watch somebody get to the point of courage that they've built up to then do a home invasion or rape, a woman, to then be able to say, now you can get charged with a felony. When somebody is on your property and stalking you and sending you sexually explicit devices and writing you love notes on your home and on your car and putting them everywhere, if you look at the Idaho 4 that were killed up there, that was exactly what that guy was doing before he built up the courage to say, now I'm going to rape one. And after he raped one, he's like, well, what do I do now? Now I'm going to kill him.
Yeah.
So we don't want that. We want to stop it when we know that it's headed in that direction. I'm not talking about a high school boy who broke up with his girlfriend. And
Right. No, I've had stalking
stalking
cases. I know.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're talking about this level of
Predators. We're talking about predators.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But I appreciate it. Thank you. So we talked about, all things mental health and physical health, and obviously it's a huge thing that we always talk on and harp on is the mental health. It's not necessarily just a incident that sparks, mental health issue. It's a cumulative time of 20 years, 25 years, 32 years, depending if our members do the drop. We know that it's the buildup of all of that stuff. Yeah. I served 2 tours in Iraq. I know what those 2 years felt like. But I can tell you, as a 19-year law enforcement officer who has seen some pretty bad stuff on the streets, that's every day.
Every day. Right. Yeah.
What I told one of our other podcast guests was, going over to Iraq and going overseas and losing somebody in a combat mission and be able to come back and compartmentalize that with the fellow brothers and sisters that you just went on that mission with, and you have that time, over the course of that deployment to deal with that, to eat it, to realize it, to relive it, and to go through all the emotions that are associated with that. But in law enforcement, you literally have to hit a button that says 10-8, and you got to be on the next call available because our responsibility is responding to 911 calls. So I don't have that pause button of a mental
stop
break.
and process it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's literally, all right, guys, we got to wrap up this scene.
Because
I need
we're going to go do it all over again.
We got to go do it all over again. Right. And it's just that the culmination of all of that throughout the career that it destroys these officers. And they may be great in hiding it. Yeah. They may not intentionally try to hide it. It may not be the bravado or the ego or whatever you want to call it. It may just be like, this is the way I survive. I got to compartmentalize this. But 5 years after they retire, they hear something, they see something, they smell something, and it takes them back to that. That's what we're talking about, to make sure that they can continue that type of healthcare and mental health care treatment even after retirement, when probably it's going to be needed just as much as when they're sworn. Yeah. So do you agree that the state should prioritize funding mental health resources that are made by law enforcement officers for law enforcement officers?
Of course. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Appreciate that. That's something that I think we're going to beat into the ground until neither one of us are breathing and or can't talk anymore is the mental health component.
Or until one of us.
Yeah, those numbers. I mean, listen. Those numbers you shared, that cannot continue.
No, it's a horrible trend. We need to see that decline rapidly. So before we close, we want to give you the floor. We appreciate your time. First of all, I see you're a well-traveled man. Going everywhere and being everywhere and talking to everybody. So I appreciate you coming in here. I also want to give you kudos to everything you've done since, when you were speaker and when you were an assistant state attorney, and obviously your military background. Anything you'd like to close and let our members know before we close this out?
Real quickly, I mentioned you want a leader that's got high character, high competence, can get things done, and has high courage, is not afraid to take on a fight. I've proven I have all 3 of those, and frankly, I'm the head and shoulders best choice to be your next governor. And the other thing is leadership experience, 20 years in the military, Operation Desert Storm, navigating through mine-infested waters, leading a team to destroy mines, 20 years later leading a team to stop foreign fighters from coming into Afghanistan to kill Americans, and that focus on mission that allows me to be successful as a speaker will allow me to be successful as a governor. And then former prosecutor, only prosecutor in the race, trying violent habitual offenders. I know what it's like to have that guy behind me, a victim beside me, and the jury in front of me. So leadership under pressure, positions of trust my entire life. The other candidates simply, and I'm not here to knock them, but do your research and ask, have they ever led anything? Have they ever led men and women? Have they shown up and delivered results for you? Have they made your life better? Can they point you to one thing? And we didn't talk about some of the cost savings we did, but universal school choice to try to help save moms and dads money on education, lowering taxes when it comes to kids, baby wipes, baby strollers, baby everything. Very impactful. It's like a pay raise, right?
Absolutely.
When your kid gets out of diapers, I know. No one has delivered the results and has the receipts that I have And I know we got Democrats and Republicans, so forgive me for mentioning this for those Democrats, but I mean, pot and abortion were issues that were important to me. Showing up to the fight, and I think every law enforcement, no matter what your political persuasion, can respect, you want someone who's going to show up to the fight.
Absolutely.
I've shown up to the fight for the PBA. I've shown up to the fight for law enforcement. I have the receipts to prove it. I will continue to do that. You guys are in my heart. I'm committed to law enforcement as somebody that came up, many of my guys in the military, as you did, went into law enforcement. I've been shoulder to shoulder as a prosecutor. I know what it's like, and we're not going to let you down. We're not going to let the crap that we saw during 2020 invade our state. We stood strong, and that push to undo qualified immunity, all that crazy stuff. We're going to stand strong. I don't care how hot it gets. I will never break. I will never stop defending law enforcement, allowing you to do your job, empowering you, looking after those affordability costs, and having your back.
Awesome. Great closing. I appreciate that. I know the men and women who hear this, and I know who serve in uniform, and I know that their spouses are going to be pleased to hear everything you did and everything that you'll continue to do if you get the privilege to become the governor of Florida.
One more thing.
Absolutely.
I always forget to say, because I'm supposed to promote our website. Follow us on social media, on X, on Facebook. We're there, Paul Renner. I think it's Paul_Renner on X, and I know what on Facebook. VoteRenner.com is our website. You can go on there and look and volunteer. We'd love to have your support. Again, I want to have the PBA support, so let your folks know. Vote. Let your leadership know that you want somebody who has actually shown up and delivered for law enforcement. Everybody's a campaign, hero, but not everybody's a true believer.
Absolutely. I'll piggyback off that. So everybody listening, please like, share, and subscribe if you like this podcast. It's going to be made available to all of our members. We have a great podcast that we're launching April 1st, so it's not an April Fool's joke. The first episode will air April 1st. Former Speaker Paul Renner, thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you.